District. I see that former board member Mark Johnson's in attendance in person. Mark, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand. Please put your right hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila? Director Avila?
Ed?
Ed.
Here. I had a glitch. I'm here.
Okay. Director Freeman? Here. Director Gray?
Here.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Here.
And Chair Denner?
Here. Dan, are there any items for agenda review?
Thank you, Chair. Staff would like to recommend that we pull item 9D, as in David, from the agenda. That'll come back at a future meeting.
We just need to get a little bit more done before it.
Correct.
And then that's going to bring us to public statements for items not on the agenda. Dan, you can tell me if I am doing this correctly. I'm going to do items not on the agenda, but if you're going to speak later, I'd like you to identify yourself now so I don't skip you. We're in Zoom and in person. So if you are going to speak later on an item on the agenda, we'll call you when that item comes up. I do have Mark's card here, but if there's anybody else, just in case I miss you, I see somebody behind a computer back there. Anybody else I should identify that you might speak later in the meeting? And Brian, I saw you turn on your camera. Am I doing that correctly? Any feedback on that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh no, you're doing. No feedback. I wasn't. I thought you meant like computer feedback. No feedback. Okay. You're absolutely right.
And Dan, that works, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good practice while we're on Zoom to make sure you don't miss anybody later in the agenda.
All right. So if you do have a speaker card, I see a few people in the back. You could bring it up to Gina. She'll bring it up to me. I just want to make sure I don't skip anybody. Anybody on Zoom you plan to speak tonight? I will ask for a public comment later, but if we go through that and I don't pause for that part, just raise your hand. We'll go with that. That brings us to approval of minutes.
I'll move approval. Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Freeman?
Aye.
Director Gray?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Yes.
Chair Denner?
Yes.
The motion carries with unanimous vote.
That brings us to the consent agenda. I don't imagine there's any public comment. Nobody identified themselves earlier. Not seeing any. Is there any discussion about the consent agenda?
Approval.
I will second that. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Freeman?
Aye.
Director Gray?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Aye.
Chair Denner?
Yes.
The motion carries with unanimous vote.
Josh, a moment ago, I didn't know if that was an audio issue. You able to hear us good?
I can hear you. There was a little bit of feedback from, it may have been Gina. I'm not sure who.
Okay.
It was a momentary.
If the audio glitches out for anybody, just let us know. We'll figure it out. That brings us to presentations, scheduled items, and public hearings. Item A, presentation of the full-time employee of the month.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Pennington, Director of Administration, will provide staff's report.
Chair Denner and members of the board, the full-time employee of the month for September 2021 is Bill Marinsky. Bill is a building specialist in the Planning and Maintenance Department. He has worked for the district for 10 years, and this is his third Employee of the Month award. The person who nominated Bill stated they were nominating him for his continuous dedication to the district. As one of the leads within the building staff, he brings a high degree of energy, commitment, and knowledge to each task at hand, ensuring it is done right. He responds promptly to after-hour call-outs and is relied upon when weekend work is needed. His vast versatility and skill set is continuously sought after, making him a valued member of the Park District. In recent weeks, Bill took charge when the splash pad went down and made the necessary repairs by coming in on a Saturday morning, ensuring that it was up and running for the weekend. Beyond his experience and work ethic, his sense of humor keeps fellow employees in high spirits. For these reasons and many others, Bill is deserving of the Employee of the Month award. And Bill was unable to come this evening, but asked me to pass on his thanks for the acknowledgement.
Any comments from staff, and then we'll go to board members? I'm going to know, as a dad, if you get that splash pad not working, oh, people get angry, because by the time you get your kids out the door, you get them dressed, you get their swimsuits on, you get all the way there, and then it just doesn't go on. I've seen people just stare, but the fact that he could get it on a Saturday morning, we appreciate that, so thank you. That's going to bring us to item B. Presentation of the Part-Time Employee of the Month.
Ms. Pennington will provide the report.
Yes, the Part-Time Employee of the Month for September 2021 is Randy Kerr. Randy, welcome. Randy is an assistant director for the Recreation Department. He's worked for the district for 7 years, and this is his first Employee of the Month award. The person who nominated Randy stated, Randy has an unfailing professional attitude, friendly demeanor, and welcoming manner towards the public and fellow employees. He provides a response to questions asked of him with patience, no matter how repetitive. Randy goes above and beyond ensuring the tasks are handled, and his attention to detail on numerous occasions has been more than helpful. He looks to improve the way things are done and goes out of his way to ensure every task assigned to him is completed above par. He's always willing to help when needed, making him a valuable member of the team. Randy has a great sense of humor and leaves lasting impressions on those he meets. We are extremely lucky to have him as an employee at Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. Congratulations, Randy.
I think we should hear from you first.
Well, I'd just like to say that for those who were responsible for this nomination and this honor, I'm greatly moved. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
I've got something for you.
The greatest gift is a sense of humor. Right? Yes.
Chair, if I could, Randy is one of the employees who during COVID, we've all had to step up and do different tasks and assignments and go above and beyond, and Randy's one of the employees that has really stepped up and filled in and helped us out in the recreation department whenever we've asked him, so thank you, Randy.
Thanks, Dan.
I don't know which one you like better, but you get them both.
Well, thank you.
No opposed with this one.
Much appreciated. There you go.
Thank you for coming.
As a board, we get together and make decisions, and we get to meet with the public and get input, but the day-to-day operations doesn't happen without staff members that are willing to do so much that's, when they're called upon. That's going to bring us to item 7C, status of the district's response to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic.
Thanks, Chair. A brief report. We haven't had any COVID-related complaints, and we've had no positive cases amongst the staff in the last couple of weeks. Programs continue to do well based on some of our numbers. On average, I think our recreation programs are about 80% of normal. So pre-COVID to where we are now is about 80%. Some programs are at 100 and some are less than 80, 60, but on average it's about 80%. We have a requirement, our after school club The school district has the requirement that you're either vaccinated or you get tested once a week. We will be starting that program next week, so anybody that's not vaccinated that works on a school campus will have to be tested once a week. We're part of a statewide program, testing program. It's $55 per test each time we do that, each a week per employee. And then finally, regarding the federal mandate regarding vaccinations and testing, we're still waiting for the federal guidelines. They haven't released that yet. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions for Dan about the district's response? And nobody identified them for public comment for that? Dan, I had a question about the $55. That $55, we're going to pay for that, the Park District?
Currently, we are planning to pay for that, yes.
And what are the numbers like for that? Do we have that? Like if we're going to need 5?
I want to say about
10?
25 will be needed to be tested weekly right now. They're about more or less.
Is that of our after-school club staff or just in total?
After school club staff.
And currently you said that was going to be on us to pay for it?
Correct.
Any other questions?
Have we had any resistance to the vaccine?
There are quite a few folks that haven't been vaccinated in the organization. So I don't know if I'd call it resistance, but we haven't asked them to. But there are quite a few that have not been vaccinated.
If that's $55 a week times 25 for months on end, I understand that some people have a variety of opinions on it, and I can respect that. If we communicate that they know that we're going to be picking up that cost.
We're just starting the program. I think, again, the federal guidelines will give us some guidance on who has the responsibility for paying that and whether we can make that choice or not. In the short term, though, because the school district's doing it, we thought we would pick it up. Once we get the federal guidelines, we'll look at those and then put together probably a more uniform program district-wide once that starts to apply to all of our employees. So I will note, it's my understanding that the school districts are getting that type of stuff paid for by the state. We are not. So even though it's months on end, right now it's a short-term measure until we can get the federal guidelines and see, and then it may be a policy. I mean, it may be a policy decision whether or not the board wants to pay for that or have the employees pay for that or some of it. I would note also that some insurances are covering testing. So as a first step, we will be submitting any employees that have insurance. We'll be asking them to submit that to their insurance companies, but we expect that some companies will accept that and some may not. Most of the after-school club employees are part-time employees and don't have health insurance through the district. So it's not offered for part-time employees, but we'll keep the board apprised as we get into the testing and the vaccinations, and if there's any policy decisions that need to be made, we'll bring that to the board.
I definitely see the value in testing to keep the students safe, especially students that are too young to be vaccinated anyways. I'm just looking at that price tag, and maybe there's somebody that they didn't see the value in getting vaccinated, but they didn't realize the financial burden that it might cost. So I'll look forward to that information. Any other questions?
Yes, on these kits that you buy, do they count those? I mean, the ones you can test yourself?
The school district, as I understand, it's requiring a certain level of test, and we're buying a self-test, but it's a higher level test that's tested. They take the test, we send it off into a lab or a testing facility, so it's a more accurate test, the one that's more expensive. It is not the rapid do-at-home test.
Okay.
No more questions on that? That brings us to continued business. There is none. It's going to bring us to new business, 9A, review and discussion regarding Phase 4, the conceptual plan for Rancho Santa Susana Community Park. I do have a speaker card on this, so I'm going to say that we're going to do the presentation, take questions from the board, then go to public comment, and then we'll have a continued discussion. So when we get to questions from the board, remember Before we get into further comments, we'll go with questions, hold the discussion until after public comment.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Evans, landscape designer, will present the report. And we have a PowerPoint to go along with this.
Thanks, Dan. Can everybody hear me?
Tom will go through the presentation, and if the board wants to reference back to any of the maps or slides in the PowerPoint, we can certainly do that when he completes his presentation.
And I think you may have some follow-up items after I get done with it. So, good evening, Chair Dennert, Board of Directors, everybody else. I have a privilege of showing you our presentation for Rancho Santa Su Community Park Phase 4. I'm going to go through a little bit of the background and history that's leading up to where we are today, and then I'll go through some alternative plans, and then we'll have some discussion. So 37 years ago, 1984, there was a plan development permit that was approved by the City Planning Commission for the master plan that was divided into 7 construction phases. Uh, 1984, phase 1 was completed, which is on the lower southwest side. In 1991, phase 2 was completed. And then in 1992, after the completion of 1 and 2, a master plan modification was submitted to change the phasing of the park in order so the community center for phase 3 could be built. So the remaining phases, see if I could do it up here, were turned into phase 4. Excuse me, so in 1994, phase 3, the community center was completed. Nice rendering. So really between that time until 2000, 2002, there were different concept designs for phase 4, but nothing was implemented. What's kind of interesting is on the right side was a very complex design that had tennis courts, we had skate lab, we had community building, we had a pond, but we didn't have any soccer fields or athletic fields. The one on the left is a little bit more recent from that one, but it still had a water feature and more of a passive design, but it did have some soccer fields and a couple basketball courts. So leading up to that for 2015, based on the community's desire for more active recreation sports venues, the Park District initiated a concept master plan to include the master plan phase 4. So the final version was approved by the board in 2015. 2018, the master plan for phase 4 was approved by the city as a permit modification number 2. And as far as that approved plan, it included 2 soccer fields, 4 full court basketball, and these are lit, volleyball courts that are lit, play area, 3 buildings, restroom, concession, storage, parking lot with 413 stalls, and 2 picnic shelters. In 2019, the project was delayed to explore other alternatives, and because there were other priority projects underway at the time. In 2021, we started alternative conceptual plans that were done by us, by staff. And the goals were to accommodate a larger grass area for athletic field space and larger public events. We also wanted to provide volleyball courts as needed, suitable to the design based on how big the grass area got. maintain the approximate amount of parking stalls per the original approved plan, and to maintain the building footprints and to relocate them as needed. So starting with the first alternative that we designed, alternative A, we have an open grass area of 9.8 acres. The approved plan had 8.8 acres. So in this alternative, we've added an acre worth of land, or grass, excuse me. We came down a few stalls, but we still have 404 parking stalls, 4 volleyball courts, 2 basketball courts. This is just an enlarged plan of it to show you the courts and the relationship to the 2 court areas with the pathways in the buildings. So, the alternative B, we looked into to see how we could even expand the grass area even more. And what we did is split this parking lot into two different parking lots. So we have the north and we have the south, or the southwest. In doing so, by adding the southwest, we take away field one of the soccer fields. But it does gain more of a continuous or overall grass area to the north. In this case, we have 11.5 acres, so it's substantially more than the previous alternative. With the split parking, we have 414 total, which is what was on the approved plan, but we have 205 to the north and 209 to the south. 6 volleyball courts, 4 basketball courts. And in the enlarged plan, we're just showing, again, the relationship of the courts, where the buildings are to the north, a little bit more central for the open grass area, and the play area really didn't change. Alternative B, we call it B1 because we kept basically the same design as the previous B, with the same amount of parking in the courts. Oh, excuse me, take back. With the courts, we took out the basketball courts, but we made 4 volleyball courts. But what we did with this design is we put a passive green space in between the parking and the courts in the community center. So it acts as a central kind of a green belt, which it could be used for smaller activities, picnics. So when people are playing in different parts of the soccer or events in the open grass area, this is a nice place just to have people picnic.
Tom, if I could, I hate to interrupt, could you go back to A, and I meant to show where the rerouting of the trail goes with each alternative as we went. So on alternative A, show them where the existing trail goes.
Oh, I'm sorry, right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, in all these alternatives.
The trail's really popular.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We have their existing jogging path, which basically goes right through the middle here. And in each of the alternatives, we've just moved it to the west, or cut through the courts, or go through the grass area, through our phase, but it still makes a connection.
Tom, on alternative B1 or one of the Bs, can you show how the trail's impacted by the alternative parking lot? So basically, go ahead.
Okay, so in this case, where the jogging trail is?
Yeah, well, the new parking lot is there, so show us where the trail goes with the parking lot.
This is where the trail, or the jogging trail goes, and we're just we're bringing it around up through the middle here, and up to the side and around. That makes a connection.
I think that's.
Is that clear enough?
Yeah.
And this kind of shows you it's the brown line that's on the wiggly line that's on the left. Just to keep going on this. So this shows you the open passive grass area, which is probably a good ½ acre, 3/4 of an acre. We have the restrooms a little bit more central, which is good. We moved the play area a little bit to the south. It kind of makes a little bit more sense. We've got parking right here. That's it for that one. And then our last alternative, C, has the largest amount of grass area, which is 13.2 acres. This one has 385 parking stalls, and it's a split parking lot again, where we have 2 halves. Obviously, you see we only have 46 spaces on the north, where the abundance of parking is in the southwest. So essentially, it makes it a whole parking lot facing LA Avenue. This one has 4 volleyball courts and 2 basketball courts. And again, this just shows the relationship to the buildings. So this slide here really just kind of is an overview of each of the alternatives. And the one thing that we want to point out, if you look on the bullet points, we have the acreage, so you can see that A was 9.8, and we have 11.5 for the Bs, and then we have 13.2. What we did with alternative A is we actually outlined some soccer fields. As we know that soccer fields have different age groups and so on, so what we did is we kept our existing fields, which are 3. We have field 1. Let's see if I can point to it. Field 1, field 2, and 3. And then we have this open area here that we could fit 10 new, conservatively, 10 new soccer fields. And they would be pinstripe. So we're talking striping only, and the lighting for this would be just on the perimeter. So there's no poles that go through the grass area. And that's the case with all these alternatives. So looking at that, if we could fit 10 new, we looked at the alternative Bs, and we could see that we could fit 12. And alternative C, you could actually fit 14. So there's a fair amount of soccer field layouts that you can do on these alternatives. This is just kind of my overview of the comparisons. The only thing on this slide is that it shows you the costs for each of the alternatives based on the preliminary costs that we did. So when we split the parking lot, you can see it jumps about $600,000. Briefly, the schedule. Obviously, we're going through the board meetings right now. 2022, if it gets approved, we go through the city, likely possibly a public or a planning commission hearing, depending on which alternative we do. Then we would get into construction documents at the end of next year. In the beginning of 2023, we'd finish the documents, go through permits, bidding, and start construction near the end of the year. And anticipated completion 2024. So our recommendations in the staff report is review and select one of the conceptual plan alternatives as a proposed master plan for the Rancho Santa Susana Community Park Phase 4 construction project, or request staff to make changes to one of the conceptual plan alternatives as directed by the board for review and consideration at a future board meeting, or provide alternative direction to staff. So we're at the point for questions and discussions.
Thank you, Tom, and I had a few comments. So, Chair and Board, when I got here a few years ago, if you recall, we had just moved into this building. We still needed to build out the maintenance facility and the activity center. We still had a loan on this building of about $6 million. And at the same time, the Oak Park After School Club had closed, so we were grappling with some financial challenges related to that instance. So all of those things were happening when I got here. I think at the time, the board had asked me to work with staff and kind of solidify or take a look at firming up a plan for the next several years, mostly in light of the fact that we were going to get some proceeds from the selling of the property. So when we did that, the board had said we would like some revenue generators, we'd like to meet some community needs, and we'd like your perspective and the staff's perspective on to make sure what we're doing is going to be good for the community. As the board is aware, we were moving forward with the activity center. We paid off the loan. We got that done. We recommended that and the board approved that. And then we designed the activity center to be a revenue generator, and we put elements in the activity center that we felt and the board knows are needed elements in the community. So that project is underway. And the third thing we did was kind of look at this, which was kind of in the pipeline for one of the projects, was to finish this park as a part of with the proceeds from selling the building. So when we looked at this, I looked at the plan from 2015. I don't know that we knew we were going to have the funds from the sale of the property when we were processing this plan. What struck me is that we do have a need for athletic field space, and I don't want to limit it to soccer because we've got lacrosse, and as the recreation staff can attest, we're always trying to find space. We did take over Apollo again so we could get some additional space for the athletic teams and leagues in the interim. So we looked at this and I thought, well, if we're going to invest, the design had 2 soccer fields in it. And my thinking was if we're going to invest in this park, it would be nice to expand the availability of field space in the plan. So what we did is we've come up with some design alternatives that more flexibly use the space. So the original plan had basically 2 fixed soccer fields with lights around those fields. We basically kind of redesigned things, looked at the size of the fields, and kind of what we're presenting to the board as an option for you to meet that athletic field space if you would like to do that. Secondly, as the board knows, and certainly your input, but we've lacked a large community gathering space, significant in the city of Simi Valley for many, many years. Went through the maps with Wayne on many occasions, just as I'm sure all of you had, looked at all of our properties, looked at other available property in the city, and determined, in my opinion, this is, if we want to try to meet those needs, additional athletic field space plus a larger gathering space in the community, that this was the location. It's our largest park. It's got the reciprocal parking with the train station across the street. So that was a fortunate opportunity. So we, again, just developed some designs for you guys to consider. The existing plan is still there. If you guys want to keep the existing plan, that is great, but we just wanted to give you guys something to think about to try to meet those community needs moving forward. So that's what we have, and we're open to any thoughts or discussion or feedback you guys have. We did take this to the Soccer Foundation. I think there were only 4 soccer folks there, so it wasn't a whole lot of input in terms of a lot of people. Their responses in their comments are in the staff report, but anyhow, so it's kind of a jumping off point. Those were kind of our goals in investing in this location, and just wanted to give the board the opportunity to consider whether or not you wanted to do a little redesign of the existing master plan with the goal of getting more athletic field space. And again, I would say this will be more of a shared use site now. I think historically it's kind of been an AYSO site, but the way we've designed it now, with the ability to put in up to 13 fields, the 3 existing fields plus 10 in the new design, it's going to, and with some lighting, it's going to meet our field space need, not only for games but practices. The other thing is that you talk to the chamber, you talk to other groups, and they're interested in having athletic tournaments. I think it's an economic development perspective from some, and I think with the designs we have before you, you could host a large soccer tournament. And I'm kind of looking at this really long term. I'm not looking at it now. I'm looking, if we build this and Obviously, we won't run those tournaments. Outside groups will, and other people may do that. But we're building the space. If you build it, they will come kind of concept for the long term, to meet the long term need of the community for athletic field space. And that goes with kind of community events as well. There's no large public space to have large community events here. Some of the other communities, Thousand Oaks, Moore Park, Camarillo, have these large spaces where you can have those type of events. And design alternatives would be something the board could do, not only from a park district perspective, but from a community-wide perspective. So with that, we'll turn it over to you guys. Again, just options for you to consider. The existing master plan is good as well. So thank you.
Questions for Steph? Elaine?
Brian?
It's going to be Elaine, then Ed. Elaine was pretty quick at it.
Okay, can we get the
Ed,
screen
Elaine's.
time where I can see the people talking?
Oh, yes, that's a good point.
Thank you.
Elaine, go ahead.
Okay. A, B, B1, and C, how many soccer fields are in each of those?
Pardon me?
On A, B, B1, and
Josh, can you hear?
how many soccer fields would be in each?
Elaine, can you speak into the mic a little bit for the people on Zoom?
Gotta speak up.
She's asking how many soccer fields we could actually fit
I'm sorry.
each of the alternatives.
On alternative A, B, B1, and C, what are the number of soccer fields that could be on each?
Right. Let me get back to that slide.
Ed doesn't want to use the slide though, Tom, so let's just,
okay.
Do you have the?
Oh, okay, so,
I
yeah.
don't mind if you use the slide if you take it off each time. I just
Okay.
want to see this.
Thank you, Ed. So put the slide back up.
Each time.
So let me qualify the question. It depends on the layout of the fields. So what we've done, and that was the goal, was to design the fields so you could stripe the fields for any number of soccer fields.
Okay.
So if you're having this, and I'll get to the answer, but if you're having a tournament with older ages, there's going to be fewer fields. If you're having a mixed tournament with younger ages, there could be more fields. But we kind of did a little mix of different age groups for each design. So the alternative A is 13 soccer fields at this location, which is 10 new fields striped on the new surface, and then you have 3 existing full-size fields at the location, field 1, 2, and 3. So 3 existing fields plus 10 new would be 13 fields.
Okay.
Alternative B is 14 fields. 12 new ones and 2 existing fields.
So
14 total.
Reconfigured.
Right, because we had said you get more green space, but we moved the parking lot away in this design and proposed taking away field 1, as we call it. So you're gaining 1 or 2 more on the Alt B, but you're losing the existing field
Right.
1. So the total is 14. And then alternative C, you could probably, fit 16 on there, which would be 13 new and 14 new and 2 existing. So let me summarize all of that. 13 fields depending on the A, 14 fields for alternative B, and 16 fields in the park for alternative C.
So we would be actually able, with alternative A, say, to host competition and bring...
Correct. So along with that, you'd have 13 fields here, potentially, more or less, depending on the type of tournament you had in the age groups. You've also got Duck Pond, which is an excellent field at Rancho Simi.
Right.
You've also got the Wood Ranch field that we have. So we could have a tournament in town with probably 18 to 20 fields if you wanted to start to attract and be a location for regional soccer tournaments, large regional soccer tournaments. Right now, the largest organization that holds tournaments is called Cal South. They currently have tournaments primarily in Lancaster, Bakersfield, and Norco. So when they have the end of year Cal South tournaments and All-Stars, most of the folks are going to Lancaster, Bakersfield, or Norco. I'm not aware of anything locally that hosts a Cal South tournament, but this would give us an opportunity to host that type of tournament, in time. Again, that's a large endeavor. There's a lot of things that have to fall into place to host that kind of tournament. But if we build this, we would have the ability to present ourselves as a host of some large, more regional soccer type tournaments, in addition to the local ones we do.
That's regardless of which alternative, right?
Well, the base plan wouldn't necessarily allow that. Yes.
Okay.
Any plan. Plan B and C get you a little more room. They get you some more green space to add, maybe between 4 and 5 additional fields in addition to Plan A.
Will this be enough restroom facilities for, might need to bring in portable?
Yeah, well, there's the design in here to build new restrooms. So there is a plan to build restrooms, and we will size those accordingly to the number of folks. A lot of times, so a soccer tournament, those large ones, they may have 3 or 4 times a year. It's not going to be every weekend. There's still going to be a need probably to build some nice new restrooms to accommodate. We probably wouldn't build to an 18-team tournament. You'd probably still need some support restrooms in those events.
My only thought on the restrooms, and then I'll move on. You're going to have the majority of the people using the soccer field, and the restrooms are down, like under A, down between sand volleyball and the basketball. Is that a conflict? I mean, it's not a very...
Well, that's what, Tom, can you go to, so alternative A right now has this design, and so with this new layout and more people in the location, Tom, if you could back out on A. The location in A right there in this, you can see that's kind of the middle of the park.
Right.
So you've got people crossing from the softball fields to the soccer fields, over into the community center, and then over into the top 2 soccer fields, or into the other soccer field. If you go to alternative B, or B1, sorry, Tom? So B1, that's kind of, we took out the basketball and added that green area there. That way, if you did have large events, that hub or that X kind of right in the middle of the park, you get an open walk-through space and you get some elbow room, I call it. The current design with all of the volleyball and basketball in there, there's not a whole lot of elbow room right in that area. So we took out the basketball, we moved the volleyball, and we opened that area up so you'd have elbow room. That being said, in that area we could put restrooms to accommodate that, and those would be centrally located to all of the looses. We also have existing restrooms over by the softball fields. So you'd have 2 sets of restrooms over by the softball fields, and then in that open green area we would add restrooms, which is central to all of the uses in the park.
I have a bit of problem losing use of field 1.
Right, okay.
I mean, it seems counterproductive somehow.
Fair enough, yeah.
To lose field 1, but that's just my
So I'll just tell you, amongst the staff and just talking about this plan, the staff originally liked B1, but Tom did some work on design in the space. I would say the majority of staff prefer option A. So that's the one where we keep field 1, we don't move the parking lot, so we don't lose field 1, and then we like the interior part of B1. So it's option A for the field space. It maintains field 1, it maintains the look, touch, and feel of the park as it exists today. You get enough space for 10 soccer fields plus the 3 existing, and then we like the middle area of option B1, Tom. So we kind of like a combination of A with that design of the open area on B1, and the majority of the staff is feeling that we don't like losing field 1 for various reasons.
Me too, but then on B1 we lose the basketball.
B1 you use basketball, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Ed?
Yeah, can we get the screen back, please? Thank you. All right, so I have a couple questions. Dan, if you can just be direct in your answers, I don't need lengthy. I just need to have my questions answered. So in terms of the walking path, compared to how it is now, what would happen to the walking path with alternative A?
The walking path would go, it would be exactly where it is now, Ed. It would meander to the left of the volleyball courts. So you'd be walking where you are now, you'd go between the volleyball courts and the proposed playground, and then it would go between field 3 and the new fields. You know where the tree line is now? The walking path would go through there, and that would be generally the same other than being rerouted a little bit in those two areas.
Would it shorten or lengthen the walking path?
Let me ask Tom that.
Slightly shorten it. Not by much. Not an alternative A.
All right. What about under alternative B?
It actually is about the same or a little bit more because it has to wrap around.
Alternative B is still there. It's a little bit longer than alternative A.
Okay. Is there anything in alternative B that would change, like the scenic nature of the path?
Yes, because the parking lot, you'd be walking right next to the new parking lot. Because you know where field 1 is? Alternative B puts a parking lot right next to the walking path.
Right, so it would be a much less enjoyable walk.
Yes.
Okay. What about under alternative A?
Alternative A, like we keep field 1. I think it's pretty close to what it is now, other than you're going to have to walk next to the volleyball courts and you'll have to walk between the soccer fields. But alternative A is still a nice walk that isn't impacted nearly as much as alternative B.
And will the path under alternative A, would it be a full path? There wouldn't be, other than similar to how it is now, or would there be interruptions in the path?
I'll ask Tom to follow up on me, but I think the path would be the same it is now. Same kind of width, same kind of feel. Yeah. Tom? Yeah?
Yeah. It would be the same. It's decomposed granite, just like we have it. I think you're talking if there's breaks in it, like going over sidewalks or we're running through driveways and things like that. Alternative A has less of that. Alternative B, you do have to cross a few places.
Okay. And what about alternative C?
Alternative C, you lose the trail because the whole front area becomes a parking lot. You don't lose it, but it goes around. Alternative C significantly impacts the trail as it exists today.
And then under the current design that we have, what would the status of the walking path be if we weren't to change anything?
I'll have Tom,
If we go with the original plan.
I think it's the same where you're going to have to reroute it around the volleyball and basketball courts in the current plan. And then it's probably about the same as A.
Probably, or it is?
I'm looking at the map. We're not at a design level of detail yet, but it's close to A. But it's going to change from what it is today because you still have to reroute the walking path around the volleyball courts and the basketball courts in the current master plan. The other thing is where it goes now, it goes along the tree line. It will be moved over more between field 3 and the new soccer fields as compared to what it exists today.
Okay, now under the alternative plans, if we were to go with the currently proposed plan as opposed to the alternative plans, it's a much less expensive design, correct?
I think it's about $600,000 less than alternative A. So alternative A is about $600,000 more than the existing design. 700, right. Something like that, based on our estimates.
And then another $600,000 to $700,000 for alternative B, and another $600,000 to $700,000 for alternative C.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in terms of the current design, how many would that leave us with the same number of soccer fields we have now?
The current design? The current design, the existing design has the 3 existing soccer fields, and you get two fields about the size of the current fields 2 and 3. So you get 5 full-size soccer fields with lights around them in the current design.
Okay. And how many full-size soccer fields do you get under alternative A?
Full size, you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 full size.
3 existing and 4 new.
Correct,
Right.
7.
7 total.
But what you're gaining is you're gaining the ability to stripe the fields under the new plan for different size fields, whereas the existing master plan are fixed full-size fields.
And then the idea that we could host like huge tournaments, that's all speculative. We don't know that that actually would materialize.
Correct.
Okay. I have comments, but I'll wait appropriately until the comment section for that.
Kate?
Hi, my main concern is about the parking spaces. Now, alternative C, we lose like 30 parking spaces. And even A, we lose a couple. Is there any kind of requirement with the city to have X number of spaces?
So we will have to talk to the city about this, but my feeling is if when we have the large events that are going to need that many spaces, it'll probably be 6 or 8 times a year, and you can use the train station for those events. So well, yes, it's like having the 4th of July. We'll have it there. There's not enough parking, but we use the train station across the street, and that'll happen. And I'll ask Tom to add, but it's equivalent to the current master plan.
Okay. Yeah.
But but we are expanding the use. We will have to talk to the city about the parking and how they feel about that.
Kate, any other questions?
That was my main concern.
Josh, any questions?
Yeah. My first one is regarding ongoing costs. Between alternative A and between all the different ones, there's roughly a 3.4 acre difference. I'm curious when it comes to, like, we're gonna have, water's gonna become more expensive and we're talking about a few acres. I'm curious if staff has a rough approximation of what the ongoing cost difference would be just for water, if we're talking roughly 3 acres.
So Josh, the existing master plan still has a bunch of grass in it. If you look at the existing plan with the 2 fields, you can see that the entire outer area is surrounded by grass. The difference is it's not athletic field grass, it would be passive grass. So the amount of green space between the 2 plans is somewhat close. We have expanded the grass area, like Tom said, by 1 acre. But if you're comparing the existing plan with alternative A, the green space is about the same. That being said, it will take more maintenance to manage the fields in an athletic field condition. So whereas it's passive grass in the existing plan, if we expand the space to include more athletic field, we will have to spend more money on those fields. I would guess it would probably, maybe I'll have Wayne answer this, but it would probably maybe 40% more in cost to maintain those fields. I don't have the number of what it costs to maintain them now. I would guess, I know Wayne rehabs them on the maintenance side once or twice a year. It may cost $30 grand to do that, so you're talking it may go from 30 grand to 60 grand as my estimate. Water usage, given that the other part's passive, I would say water usage may go up a little bit, but not a whole lot more than the plan you have before you. I'd ask Wayne or Tom to see if they feel the same.
I should say that the water costs will be about the same. You've got to water them both the same amount. It just depends on which type of turf we put in, hybrid Bermuda or Alta Fescue. They both require the same amount of water.
Josh, did you hear that? Wayne said the water between the 2 plans is about the same. It's that component of field maintenance that might be more, but you're talking on order of maybe $20,000 or $30,000 more a year.
Okay, that's a helpful number just because we're talking about increasing ongoing costs. I want to make sure we're not, for the ambition of a great idea, I don't want to saddle on ongoing costs we may never get out.
Josh, I did want to mention that if we have more fields available, we rent our fields by the hour, by the size of the field. So if we're able to, rather than have the 2 fields under the existing alternative, we'll be able to rent more fields because we'll have more fields to rent by the hour. So we're expecting that the revenue on the existing master plan versus the revenue on option A, we're expecting quite a bit more revenue out of alternative A than you would under the existing design.
One other question is, I haven't stepped inside in a few years. How many basketball courts exactly are inside the community center?
I can answer that. There's one full court. When I say full court, I believe it's collegiate, it's collegiate. That takes the full length of the inside, and then you have two full courts going the other direction that are, I don't know, I guess high school level.
And then my last question, maybe a little vague, or not vague, but maybe too specific for this point, but I'm curious with these plans, has there been consideration, we're clearly going to add a significant amount of pavement. Is this the stage where we should be considering shading with all that new pavement?
It's a good suggestion. Where folks are doing shading with solar. We hadn't thought about that, so that's something to comment we would take, and if whatever direction you give us, we could take that and explore that if you'd like.
Okay, I will make my comments in the comments slot.
I have some questions. I was going last in case other people ask them. One of the suggestions.
Brian, I had a couple more questions, but I can go after you.
Okay, we'll see if I cover them. One of the suggestions from the soccer community was a turf field. How does that impact cost? I mean, obviously less water, but the initial cost of maintenance?
Yeah, it's a considerable expense to put. We did Challenger Field, and that was a big expense. One of the things to maybe bring up, and Recreation might be able to say, but if we do a turf field, it's an open public turf field. So it's out for more wear and tear, and so it may not be worthy. Yeah.
Sure, if I could answer. Turf field is probably going to be about $1 million more to put in a turf field, but you do save on the maintenance. You save on the water and the rehabilitation and all of those things. So I think over time, turf fields eventually pay for themselves. I think turf fields have a 10-year lifespan is what they say. So over that 10 years, you wouldn't have to water that field, you wouldn't have to put sand on it, you wouldn't have to rehabilitate it. The third, more concerned about a turf field is that in a school environment, those are locked fields. Those are secure fields. You don't have the general public using them. So one of the downsides to a turf field would be security, access to the field, and damage to the field. So significant increase on the front end on the cost of the project. Some operational savings. We haven't run those numbers entirely, but concerned about security of a turf field. Kids will damage that and tear it up, and could potentially do things to the field. So
I'm curious how they're working over in Camarillo with Pleasant Valley. If they put artificial turf.
I don't know. Yeah.
I know it was very expensive initially.
Yeah.
So Josh brought it up, but I'm not asking for the number, but is there any design element that could reduce the water cost that we haven't considered or hasn't been brought up tonight?
That hasn't been brought up. I think Wayne just hit it, that the type of grass would be significant saving. We did Runkle Canyon Park, we actually did the hybrid Bermuda. And I don't know what kind of savings we're doing, but we don't have to water as much.
But there's a trade-off. Bermuda grass goes brown.
Right.
So.
And then there's trees along the walking path. How many of those approximately, or maybe a percentage, not exact number, get cut down?
Actually, on all alternatives, we would take them out.
All of the trees?
All the trees.
The trees along just that one strip of the walking path?
Correct.
And is there any complications that could arise from removing those? like environmental reports?
No, I believe those are elm trees, so they're not a heritage tree or like a sycamore or an oak tree.
Ed, you have some more questions?
I do. So I want to do a couple questions comparing the current design with alternative A. I just want to be clear on this. Well, first of all, the current design compared to what we have now would still give us additional field space, correct?
Well, if you're saying what we have on the ground now or what we have in the design now, what we have in the ground now is about the same amount of plain space as you do have in the current master plan.
Okay, so in terms of the number of soccer fields, it would be the same?
Correct.
Okay, and and that would be, and so that would be, you said 5 full-size soccer fields?
Correct, under the current design now. I would point out, Ed, that you can probably fit 2 full-size soccer fields out there on that now. But right now, you can stripe the existing field for different size fields. With the master plan we have designed with light poles around them and 2 fields, it's going to be more difficult for the leagues to stripe the field under the current master plan as to compared to what's in the ground now because of the situation of the fields and the lighting.
But in terms of lighted usable fields, we would gain a couple then?
We'd gain 2 lighted fields, yes.
2 lighted full-size fields?
Correct.
Which is something the soccer community wants, correct?
Well,
I know there was a lot of questions about
the soccer community wants more.
I have to say, I heard about half the meeting the other night.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear.
The soccer community wants more than the 2 fields that are in the existing master plan.
Right, but they also want the fields lighted.
They want the fields lighted, yes.
Right. Okay, and in the current plan compared to alternative A, we would lose a couple basketball courts, correct?
Correct.
And in the current plan, compared to alternative A, it would be about $600,000 to $700,000 more based on our estimate right now, and we know we're usually short on these estimates.
Yes.
Okay. And from the and to Josh's point, I hadn't even thought of that. With alternative A compared to the current plan, there would be likely additional maintenance costs.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Not seeing any further questions for staff. We're going to go to public comment. I have Mark Johnson.
Thank you, Sheriff Deputy. I could answer all your guys' questions if I had 2 hours.
Mark, if you could turn on that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Director Dannard. I could answer all your guys' questions if I had 2 hours, but only given 3 minutes does not give me a lot to say for all the stuff and questions that have been brought up. So I'll try to keep it as my 3 minute time. For 30 years, I've been working on this project, more than some of you have ever been even around. I know everything and every question you've asked, I've gone over. Yes, the soccer community needs more than just 2 more fields. We would like to have the same as softball. We'd like to have the same as that you give baseball, and the same exclusivity that you give them for those fields, which we'll never get. Because soccer fields are open for the entire public. That's a big thing. So we do need more fields. You have been given different proposals here. Consider them very, very carefully, not just for soccer, but for the community as a whole. Because I work both sides of the aisle. As a soccer person, I want the biggest space I could possibly get, because if I have 12 fields, I can run a state tournament, I can run a national tournament, and I can run all my tournaments at one site. Most of you don't know the Eclipse Soccer Tournament, when they run, makes $80,000 to this club. With a $20,000 to $30,000 profit each and every time. And they're doing it with less fields. Okay? So tournaments make money for us. I personally like number B. I know Elaine doesn't want to get rid of field number 1. If you've ever played on field number 1, it is the most horrible field to play on. It slopes.
gets water. Our maintenance people have done everything they possibly can to try to get it to work. It just doesn't work. To have one space area with lots and lots of room, with fields 2 and 3 there, works much more better for tournaments. Restrooms, you're always going to have a tournament, you're going to have to bring in restrooms. There is not one tournament in any state that doesn't have, bring in lots of portable restrooms. You can't, the kids are not there. All the young ladies will all go to community center, the nice portable ones, all the guys, they'll go to the, so that's something that'll have to be taken care of. Please look at all the sites. Look at all the recommendations. Ask lots of questions, but I don't think you've done. You haven't brought the public into it to actually give you. You've gone to the soccer. 4 people showed up. I couldn't be there. Sorry, I was on a cruise. But you need to get the input. Like I said, 30 years I've been working on this program. I'm the only member of the Soccer Foundation still around, one of the original founders of it. And I'm the only one who really knows all the entire history except for Pepe. So when you get ready to decide what you're going to do, think of what the soccer community needs, but please think of what the community needs just as much. The community needs a large piece of land for all sorts of different things. Fairs, big public gatherings, 4th of July, they need that. Director Danner brought up the basketball courts. We need more portable basketball courts at that site. Because at the gym, there's only 2, 3. You can put more outside. Great for everybody. I don't know about sand volleyball. I don't play it. But I do know the kids who want basketball, they need more courts. Besides, it's nice when there's a tournament going on for your kids to go play. Keep the play area in there, okay? Watch my 3 minutes. It's almost more than that. Okay? So please, I like one of the Bs because I think this gives us more space for the buck. And I'm thinking, not 30 years past, 30 years down the line, we won't be here. And we've got to plan for that. And I would like to know if anything you have, any conversations, or you're going to have more meetings, I'd like to be notified so I can show up to them as well. Because there's so much history going on here that people do not know.
We could do that, Mark. I'll direct staff if there's any discussion, any meeting, to make sure that Mark Johnson's notified of that, whether it's a committee meeting or a board meeting, if it's on the agenda anyway at all.
And your timeline and stuff that Tom has brought out, please let me know. I'll be there as much as I possibly can. I'd like to also, I'll leave one thing. Now go away, because you're going to go through this again. Please remember, baseball has exclusive fields. Nobody gets to use them. And I know from my history, we were all supposed to let the public use it. Try to use Sinaloa someday, walk on there with your grandson and play baseball. They get very, very mad and kick you out.
Mark, thank you for your time, because I know you've got more input for us.
Yes.
We'll definitely not be finishing this project tonight, and I'm sure you'll join us again and have more time to speak. Is there any other member of the public that wants to speak on this agenda item? Looking out into the crowd. It's mostly staff and Mark. That'll bring it to board member discussion. I have a few more comments on the design before we get to extended discussion. One of them is the play area. I would ask staff as we go forward with whichever plan and alternative to include me at the committee level to look at the alternatives or the ideas for the play area. And then Josh brought up shaded parking. If you've gone to a park recently or a game at a school and you got to park under the solar panels, it's clean energy, and when you get back, your car's not really hot. It's really nice. So that's an alternative or a possibility to include, and I would like to see that. Then I see this as a possibility to open up concerts, big community events, a big space for soccer, a big space for community events, that we could attract larger events to our area and include more people. And if we're going to do it right, I do agree with what Mark said about 30 years from now, although I do plan to be here in 30 years. But I get what you're saying is we need to plan for the future. As far as parking goes, I'm good with not having maximum parking because for our largest events, we're going to overflow parking to the train station. And I'd rather see more park than parking lot. And then I'm looking at the alternatives, and I know staff had some reasons that A has some good choices to it. But there's an area in B that I really like, and if that could be incorporated into A, I'm more interested in A in that way. So sand volleyball doesn't have a dedicated place. Basketball has a couple good places to play basketball. So if we could put everything in a park, we would. But if we're making choices, if I want to go play basketball and you're going to play with a group of people, you're going to go to Rancho Tapo, maybe Rancho Madera. If we had a couple more basketball courts, it won't shift that unless there was enough to create community. Because you know if you go to Rancho Tapo, you could join a pickup game. But I really want to keep the sand volleyball courts as part of the plan, and I also like that green space as a part of that. So if that eliminates basketball, that still means there's basketball at the park, whether it's temporary or inside. But sand volleyball puts something on the east end of Simi Valley for sand volleyball, and it puts it enough that we can host volleyball tournaments there too. So we can host soccer tournaments and volleyball tournaments if we get enough courts. And sand volleyball is growing, and it's now going to be a CIF sport. So the teams are going to need a place to play, practice, and have tournaments. So the part of design B1 I really like is the grassy area. And if it does end up being grass, it's still that rest area. Imagine you go to a soccer tournament, and between games, where are you supposed to sit? Like on the sidelines? Or there's a shaded tree area with picnics, and you can have your end of your banquet right there and break between games. So I like that part. Dan, could that be squeezed into element A for removing basketball?
Yes.
So that would mean if the other board members really like A and I really like B1, well, some of the B1 elements could be brought over to A.
Correct.
Other comments? I see Ed and then Josh.
I have a question.
I see Ed, Josh, then Elaine. I'm just going to order I noticed you. So Ed, go ahead.
So I just want to indicate, one of the things I'll agree with what our public speaker, Mark, said is that we need to look at this from the standpoint of the entire community. And there's a lot of factors to that. There's use, there's cost. I know the soccer community needs more fields, but it isn't just about the soccer community. The one thing that I am most concerned about, because I'm there a lot, I'm there at different times a day, is I don't want the basis of the walking path to be taken away. And anything other than the current plan or alternative A will significantly modify that and take away from the fun of doing that. So and then when you add to that the significant cost for alternative B or alternative C, there's no way in good conscience I could vote for either one of those alternatives. My preference, because we don't lose the parking spaces, we don't lose the basketball courts, we will still have the lighted soccer fields, and we'll still have the essence of the walking path as we do. My preference is actually for the current approved plan. However, I could live for all those same reasons with alternative A. There's no way in the world that I could live, even if it was at the same cost, I couldn't live with alternative B or alternative C because of what it does to the nature of the park. But the fact that we'd actually be paying more for that, both immediately and down the road, to me is unconscionable. So I have a slight preference for the current approved plan, but I could certainly live with alternative A. The other alternatives for me are unacceptable.
I saw Josh and then Elaine, just in the speed at which you raised your hands. Josh?
Yeah, so I wanted to agree with plenty of the remarks from the chair. I did want to add in terms of shading, I do agree, solar shading is great. I also want to emphasize I'm not just talking about that. I'm also encouraging, shade from trees, and I think part of that goes into, I also like the, I don't know what to call it, the central area of alternative B1 with the break area. I would also agree with some past comments that I don't think the, basketball courts are nice. I've grown up playing on them, regularly do pick up at Rancho Tapo, and I can tell you, unless these were some of the best outdoor basketball courts in the state, I'm probably still going to go play at Rancho Tapo because that's where everybody plays and there's lots of space and overflow space. And on top of just for reference, there's comments about turf. I also think, I don't quite believe that turf is, like, for lack of a better word, in vogue anymore. Not just the added cost, but I think most fields that I've run into in most sports that are developing new fields, I think turf has been moved away from for various reasons. And I wouldn't care to see turf in any alternative. Those are my comments.
Elaine?
If we went to B, what would we do with the field A? It would be too small to be a regulation field.
You said if we went to alternative B, what would we do with field 1?
Yeah.
Field 1 goes away, it becomes a parking lot in alternative B.
The whole thing is the parking lot?
The whole thing becomes a parking lot.
The whole thing?
In B, yes.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Thank you.
Kate?
Yeah, I just want to say, well, my comments. I'm leaning toward alternate A because I really like the flexibility of the being able to restripe the soccer fields. That was A, right? They're all starting to look alike. Also, that makes it flexible for, like, 10, 20 years from now when disc golf is suddenly the new thing. We can go ahead and stripe for that. That would be nice. I like that. My biggest concern, as I said earlier, is reducing the parking, but as long as we have the reciprocal arrangement with the train station, that should probably take care of it. So I think I'm leaning toward A. Me too.
Wayne, is there any way that with alternative A, with that lower field, that the maintenance issue could be improved? It's kind of sometimes swampy, and I know we've worked on it.
Let me restate the question just to be clear, because I've had the same thought. Wayne, if we spent more money, could we rehabilitate field A and make it a better field?
Yes.
The answer was yes. But I would imagine as a part of this project, we would probably strip field A, redo the drainage, or field 1. We'd redo the drainage, we'd use disparate grass there, but we could definitely, I would call that field a D level field right now. We could make it a B plus or an A field, but as a part of this project, it would add somewhat to the cost of the project to completely redo field 1 as a part of the project. And I would recommend we do it as a part of the project if we do that, but we could do that.
Then Wayne, I'm looking at the community center on the west side of it. I would describe it as a stage, maybe, with a few stairs.
Yes.
Is that impacted by any of these plans?
No.
So as we look at part of that design, already a lot of young people skateboard right there. And if I'm not saying to make it into a skate plaza or a skate park, being that they already skate right there and they're allowed to, that possibly we consider the features that could be added to that at minimal cost, or maybe even rails that they could check out from the community center.
I'll stand up here.
Josh, Ed, Wayne is smiling. I don't know what that means yet.
The answer is yes. We can convert it into a little tiny skate area.
So I'm not thinking a skate plaza, but each activity doesn't need to be concentrated in one area. Maybe if you live on this end of town, like the kids that skateboard outside the building, it could be a beginner, a top lot, if you will, for skateboarding.
Yes.
With just a couple features put into there.
Chair, if I could ask how the other board members feel about that concept or idea?
So to clarify it, they already skateboard on the stairs right there, and I'm thinking a couple features that skateboarders like built into what's already there?
It just depends on how much that would cost.
And Josh, we have a staff member approaching. Zach is, and then I'll get to your question.
I just received a text from Laura, who's on the meeting, and we could call on her, but she is a little concerned about the current skating conditions at the park interfering with some rentals there. So just something to consider when you go through the process. If we can do it in a way that doesn't impact weddings and events that are taking place in the community center, then I think we'd be supportive of that, but we want to be cautious that we're not encouraging skating while there's other rentable activities there, just for the record.
Josh, can we go to Laura right before you?
Absolutely. Well, yeah.
Laura's probably an expert in this. She probably frequently interacts with the skateboarders right there. Laura, what input do you have?
Yes, my only concern is because of we have a lot of activity that's happening outside there, and a lot of people, one of the big features we have is the patio area. And I'm trying to improve that patio area outside, and I just don't think having the skateboarders coming by that area is going to actually entice people to rent the facility as much. Plus the amount of activity we have in our basketball league games that are inside as well. We do use outside every once in a while, including all the summer camps as well. We use that outdoor amphitheater.
How often would you say kids are skateboarding out there right now?
Every day. We encourage them to go to the skate plaza. A lot of them are actually coming from the Senior High area that don't have transportation to get over to Bertwood.
So we don't need to decide on that part of the design tonight. That is my suggestion, to consider how to do that with Laura's input, with minimizing the disruptions. But if they're going to skateboard there anyways, and they don't have cars, maybe it can make it a little bit fun. But Laura could think of a way that we can make her job easier when they need to not be there. Josh?
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I was going to comment that I would also encourage looking into how to include a skate feature if possible, and maybe there's a way to kill two birds with one stone here. If skaters are disrupting it, then maybe there's a different, on the far end of the parking lot. I guess you don't want to add it near a bunch of cars, but to add a feature or two that's a distance away from the current amphitheater, to not to incentivize distance from the community center itself.
Maybe, Laura, one of the ways when we get back to that, it could be a checkout system, so when you need them to go away, you bring the equipment inside.
Yeah, if it's a portable system, that could be a consideration, but I would try to take it away from the building. I don't know if there's even, considering the plans that have been presented, if there's even a large enough space. It'd be more like a pump track alone, or just some type of area where they can just do the rails and that's it.
Any other comments from board members?
Yes.
I have a question.
I see Lane and then Ed.
I like alternative A, and as part of that, redoing Field 1. I hesitate to move forward with any kind of skate park. That was about $600,000. And on a per capita basis, I'm not sure that's the best investment for this park. But that's just my opinion. And I go for alternative A because it gets the fields we need and the parking we need, basketball courts, which I think are important, volleyball courts, and the tot lot, and I think it would really finish out the park for a long time to come and service lots of people in the community.
Elaine, I missed one part. You said volleyball court, and did you comment on the basketball part? You said you did support the volleyball part?
I do support the volleyball courts, yes. But
and then were you fine with reducing basketball or eliminating it?
No, I want basketball, volleyball, but I'm not for the skate park.
Ed?
I have one question, and then a comment. Dan, I just want to confirm, under alternative A, the essence of the walking path and the approximate distance of the walking path would remain as it is now, correct?
Correct, and Ed, I have a note here. I'm keeping notes to develop the consensus here, but I have a note here to ensure that the walking trail maintains its existing character and integrity. So I'd imagine what I'm hearing, we're probably going to be bringing this back to the board again, and we to bring you back some more information and some more visuals on the trail as well. So.
I'm gonna, right, so I want to, in light of that, I just want to make a motion so that the staff is clear on what they're doing. I'm gonna make it, and again, we can get a second or not get a second. I'm gonna make a motion that we move forward with alternative A, but that the staff come back to the full board with possible modifications taking into account the comments about a skating area, verifying that the basis of the walking path would remain, and that there is the provision including the volleyball court. So that'll be my motion.
Chair, if I could, I would add to that us evaluating shaded parking, Ed. Are you in potential solar
Sure.
there?
Right.
And then, and then lastly,
My point is to come back to the full board with how that would look, but with alternative A as the basis for all of that.
Right, and would you say, I heard the consensus to be we wanted the interior part to be the B1, meaning the open grass area with volleyball and no basketball. That's what I heard the consensus, I thought.
That's not.
That's what I heard as consensus. I'm not saying.
I don't want anything that's going to impact the walking path if it's going to start getting exorbitantly expensive. So, I mean, the staff can come back with based on the motion with whatever concepts it wants, but that's my motion.
Elaine wanted to preserve the basketball. My point was eliminating basketball allows us to have that green space between all the games. If it was basketball or no basketball, I'd go with basketball. But if it's basketball or a green area for a gathering between games, otherwise you're out in the middle of the sun. Like between games, unless you bring an umbrella, you're sitting in the middle of the field. And often they don't want you there either because you're on the sidelines of another game.
My observation is when people are out for soccer, they bring their umbrellas anyway, and they're sitting around the field watching the game. I mean, it's a nice feature, but it's not nice enough for me to give up the basketball. I'd rather have basketball.
So the staff and I are talking.
Just so that it's clear, my motion is that we proceed with alternative A as the basis, with the comments that have been made regarding the walking path, the skating area, the volleyball courts, possibly alternatives with the basketball courts and the shaded parking, and also taking cost into account, but that we proceed with it under alternative A. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
That's pretty much alternative A as it exists now, so I don't know what we bring back. I'd bring you back alternative A again.
Okay. Well, there was comments about possibly looking at a skating area. There were the volleyball courts are included within alternative A, correct?
Yes, but so is the basketball, and I heard a couple other members that were interested in the open grass area versus the design in the middle of alternative A. So I heard a couple folks that were interested in just the volleyball and the grass area, but not the basketball, in order to gain the grassy area in between that area.
Kate, do you have any input on basketball and grassy area?
Well, we've got volleyball, we've got grassy area, we've got basketball. Did I say basketball? I'm not really thrilled with the idea of skate. We've already got a skate park. I'm not really thrilled with the idea of adding that in here. I would like to investigate the covered parking with PVP panels, solar panels on the roofs. I think that's a good idea.
So just so that it's clear, the motion is suggesting that that we have something brought back to us under alternative A that we can either agree on or not agree on that has recommendations for shaded parking in the skate area. It doesn't mean that we're going to do it, but it means that we proceed with those ideas under alternative A.
Dan, you get that motion?
I do. I'm still not clear on the B1 design and the interior, and I still needed some, are the other board members interested in rehabbing Field 1?
I'm not as concerned with Field 1 when we add all the other field space.
Right.
Because there'll be high quality fields nearby. And there might be a little bit less pressure on the field because there's so many other fields nearby. And that open space, I'm definitely in favor of that part, as it's going to be beautiful versus the huge green open fields are nice, but they're between games. They're asking you to get off of those, not picnic on them. So during the game, you're right. You would sit with an umbrella and watch the game. But if you're here for a tournament, you're supposed to go lay in the grass someplace.
So the way the design is with the multiple fields on the space and putting 10 fields on there, there's not going to be a whole lot of room between the fields. There'll be room for spectating, but you're not going to have an area for teams that are there to seek respite other than on the sideline. So that was the idea with that green grassy area. The other thought with the green grassy area, we think it's a nice synergy with the community center, because you're going to have basically a backyard to the community center. That's a green grass area with the volleyball courts. And then we talked about the need of basketball in the community. We have 37 outdoor basketball courts. We've got a bunch at Rancho Tapa. We also have a huge one at Rancho Madera, and we have basketball courts in a lot of our neighborhood parks. So kind of through that analysis, we thought that basketball, we're meeting that need for basketball in the community, and the upside was to open up that space. One, for it, we thought it went well with the community center, but also it creates this, like I said, a central area in the park that's open for elbow room, so to speak. If you put volleyball and basketball in there right in the middle of the park, along with all the activity and all those big events, there's not going to be a whole lot of space for people to get some elbow room. So that was our thinking, staff's thinking when we talked about it basketball is great, but we thought we could use the space better at this particular location given design without.
I know at that committee meeting we had also discussed not getting the park to be too crowded.
Correct.
We need more features like basketball. We space things out. And then there was also a maintenance issue of putting basketball right next to sand volleyball.
Correct.
Because you gotta get the sand off the basketball court is
all right, so just to move this along, I'll modify my motion to include the more of the grassy space in lieu of the basketball courts under alternative A. And then taking a look at what covered parking and possibly a skating area would look like.
I'm clear on that direction.
All right, so
but we still have a second. We just changed the motion from Ms. Freeman.
I'll second it.
Well, Elaine may not second it. Someone else may have to.
Elaine did second it.
I'll second it.
We had a lot of people that want second one, but I heard Elaine first. That's good. And as a discussion of that, I didn't advocate for building another skate park. I'm saying the place where they're already skating, it could be as simple as 3 24 and 36-inch benches that you can skate on. So just, they're already going to skate there, but if we find a different way to, they're going to skate there anyways, it might be a little bit nicer of a skating place. But I wouldn't even call it a skate park. It's really a couple benches thrown in there or something like that.
So Chair, just for clarity, because we've just under the motion, I just want to bullet point staff's direction. We're going to go with alternative A. We're going to bring all this back to the board. Alternative A with the central area designed like B1. We're going to ensure that the trail is well taken care of and designed within alternative A, including adding the B1. We're going to look at adding shaded parking with a solar component to that shaded parking. And we're going to look at adding some small skate type amenities within that design.
Yeah, I think that summarizes it.
And if I could, board, just one more, I'm sorry. I think I heard we don't want to look at rehabbing Field 1. Or do we do? I heard some people saying, let's look at redoing field 1, and then I heard other folks say, let's leave it the way it is. So I personally.
Not part of my motion.
Yeah, not part of your motion.
Not part of my motion.
Okay.
I'm going to ask Gina to call the roll unless there's further discussion. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila.
Aye.
Director Freeman. Aye. Director Gray.
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien.
Aye.
And Chair Denner.
Yes.
That motion carries with a unanimous vote.
We're going to take a 5-minute break before the next item. The next item up is going to be under new business 9B, but it's currently 8:04. We'll be back in session at 8:09. It's going to bring us to item 9B, new business. Approval of Resolution 2013, adopting annual budget for fiscal year 2021-2022.
Alex, are we back online? Camera operators going?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Pennington will provide staff's report.
Chair Dennard and members of the board, as you are aware, the preliminary budget was adopted on June 17th, and 2 public hearings were held since that time in Simi Valley and Oak Park. The material changes to the preliminary budget are outlined in the staff report, which include an increase of $778,460 to the general fund reserve account. We reduced revenue in the Simi Valley Assessment Fund in the amount of $71,300. There was an increase in expenses in the Simi Valley and Oak Park Assessment Fund totaling $96,000, and that was for the showmobile. The Park Dedication Fund balance increased by $250,847. An additional $65,431 was allocated to the Rancho Santa Susana Community Park Phase 4 Reserve Fund. And the capital expense in the Golf Course Fund was increased by $168,850 for the renovation of Jay's Club Shack. These changes are incorporated in the final budget document, and at this time, staff is recommending approval of Resolution 2013, adopting the final annual budget for fiscal year 21-22.
Chair, I just wanted to note that the showmobile was simply a carryover from last year. So the money was budgeted last year, but the bill didn't come until this year, so we're just rebudgeting that this year. And Jay's Club Shack was budgeted last year, albeit at a lower dollar amount. We've carried it over from last year and increased the dollar amount, and the board reviewed that item when we let the contract for that project.
Are there questions for staff?
What was our reserve? Would you remind me? So it increased by $778,000 from what?
I think we were at, let me look at the numbers real quick, give me a moment. So we were at about 7.6 million, 7.7, and this increases it to 8.4 million.
Thank you. I'll move approval of the resolution.
I'm going to ask if there's any public comment, either online or in person. I think I heard a motion.
I made a motion.
I'll second.
We got a first and a second. Any discussion? I know that we have discussed the budget and it's an ongoing process, so our quickness through it doesn't mean that we don't have thought to it, but we've done this at variety meetings with input from the public over time. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila.
Aye.
Director Freeman.
Aye.
Director Gray.
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien.
Aye.
And Chair Denner.
Yes.
The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
This brings us to new business. Item C, authorization to solicit proposals for Simi Hills Golf Course cart fleet contract.
Thank you, Chair. Golf Course Manager Brian Reed will present staff's report.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. This evening, my report will seek authorization to solicit proposals for a replacement golf cart fleet at Simi Hills Golf Course. I'll give you a little background, discuss current conditions and some comments, and then be open to any discussion or any questions that you may have. Background, on January 3rd of 2019, the Board of Directors approved a 42-month lease agreement between the Park District and Yamaha Motor Corporation for the lease of 84 golf carts, which is our standard fleet, and 8 utility carts for Simi Hills Golf Course. That lease expires on October 1st of 2022, and in coordination with the end of that lease, staff intends to return the current carts to Yamaha and lease a new fleet, as we do every 3 or 4 years. Current findings, the district typically leases carts for 36 months at Simi Hills Golf Course. This length of term is primarily due to maintenance reasons, as golf cart fleets at Simi Hills hold up generally pretty well for 3 years, but much longer than that they start to break down and show their wear. As golf cart battery technology has improved in recent years, they are lasting longer mechanically, but with the additional usage lately, golf carts are accumulating hours more quickly, and they're burning out batteries. Longer lease terms can be more attractive because they lower the monthly lease payments, but if carts exceed their hour limits, we may be exposed to repair costs which are not covered by warranty. And the cost difference between 36 and 42 months for lease terms is not really dramatic, so staff believes our interests are best served by a 36-month lease term. Currently, the fleet of golf carts includes a GPS system that's built into it, which Simi Hills has offered for approximately 5 years. This GPS system costs the district about $30,000 a year, and that is slightly offset by the sale of advertising, which brings in around $3,000 a year. These GPS units provide direction and distance to information to golfers, but they can also be accessed from the golf shop to help remotely marshal the golf course. Staff has examined the cost and benefits of these units and recommends that the course does not lease GPS units on this next fleet. Most of our competitors in the local area do not have golf cart GPS. Only 4 of the 18 most closest golf courses do provide that, and they are a little bit failure prone. We have 7 carts that are down right now for GPS problems, so they're not exactly as dependable as we'd like them to be. Since only 4 of the nearest 18 competitors offer GPS, the absence of them we don't feel will dramatically impact the image of the golf course or the district. Still, staff would like to take a few actions to mitigate any concerns, including refreshing the yardage markers on the golf course and providing free GPS information on our golf course app, which is about $2,400 a year. There's a number of apps that you can download on your phone that provide GPS. They're open source. There's a lot of them that are free that you can access. Some golfers may ask for a price reduction since we are removing an amenity. So staff is also recommending a few inexpensive upgrades to the carts to the bid specifications, such as windshields and upgraded seats and wheels, which will help improve the appearance of the carts and the comfort and offset any comments about cart rental rates. All 3 major golf cart companies generally quote 4 to 6 weeks for delivery of a new fleet, but due to current supply line disruptions, all 3 are quoting many months to almost a year. Yamaha in specific quoted 8 to 10 months. With our current lease expiring in October of next year, so we want to get this order going and get it in the queue so that we can make that timeline. All 3 golf cart manufacturers typically roll out old fleets within 6 months of the expiration of the lease, so even if the supply lines improve, the fleet replacement will still be in our normal replacement window. If approved, this request for proposals would be advertised on October 31st, with proposals due on November 30th. All 3 major cart fleet suppliers are expecting this RFP, and they indicated they can make that timeline easy. The fiscal impact, removing the GPS systems will save us $30,000 a year. We'll lose that advertising revenue that we currently bring in. And then the slight upgrades to the carts and upgrades to our course app will cost us about $10,000. So the net savings is approximately $20,000 a year due to this change. Staff does not anticipate any reduction in revenue or loss of play because of this action. And so our board action requested is to authorize the district to solicit proposals to enter into a 36-month lease for a fleet of 92 carts, which is 84 electric golf carts and 8 utility carts. 2 of those carts are assigned for marshals, and the remaining 6 will be for course maintenance as they are now. And I'm available for any questions or discussion. Dan, unless you have anything you'd like to add.
Board members, any questions?
I'm just curious. Can somebody actually download on their phone our golf course and look at all that holds?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a number of apps that you can download on your phone. It gives you the direct, the distance to the hole, and pictures and flyover. There's a ton of that information available out online. And interesting point that you bring up, because those apps are kind of battery hogs. And in the past we've got pushback because a lot of players didn't want to use those apps because it would kill the battery on their cell phone while they're playing. But over the last couple of fleets, we've had an option for battery USB chargers, because there's batteries in the cart, so they can charge their phone off of the cart, and that kind of mitigates the issue with burning through your battery. So it's worked out pretty well. A lot of people do use that currently.
Any other questions?
No, I had the same question.
Not seeing any. Are there any motions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I'll second.
I got Ed and Josh. We're quick at that. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Freeman? Aye. Director Gray?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Aye.
Chair Dunner?
Yes.
The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Thank you very much.
Item 9D was removed from the agenda, which would bring us to 9E. 9E is authorization to solicit bids for the Medea Creek Wildfire Resiliency Palm Tree Removal Project, Fire Damage Debris and Invasive Species Removal Project.
Mr. Nakaoka will provide the report.
Chair Dennert, members of the board. In April this year, the Park District submitted grant applications with the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy as part of the California Wildlife Prevention Early Action Plan. In May of this year, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy notified the Park District that the grant application was approved in the full amount that we requested, which was $395,000. In June this year, Dan executed the agreements, and we secured the grant. The grant has 3 major components in it. One is burnt and dead vegetation removal, including invasive species removals along Medea Creek within Old Canyon Community Park. The second one is to design and install a natural fire break along the northerly limits of Old Park. The third was to procure a skid steer loader, which I'll call a Bobcat, for fire trail maintenance and fuel reduction purposes. To start the work under the first item, staff has prepared 2 bid packages, 2 separate packages, one for the Medea Creek Wildfire Resiliency Palm Tree Removal Project, and a second one for the Medea Creek Wildfire Resiliency Fire Damage Debris and Invasive Species Removal Project. Both of these projects will start off from Bromley Drive. Everybody knows that's the upper limits of Old Canyon Community Park, and work south to Canyon Road or Medea Creek Lane, whichever we get to first. The palm tree removal project is pretty self-explanatory. Any dead or alive palm trees will be removed. We're going to do this in 100-yard increments. The invasive species removal will take care of a lot of the non-native acacia that's up there. Removal of residual burnt material that's still there in Medea Creek itself. We're also going to start in 100-yard increments. The money we have, we're not exactly sure how much each 100 yards is going to cost us, so our bid package has been broken down so we can use all the money up and get as far down the creek bed as possible. The second item on your list, which is the installation of the natural tree or oak tree fire break. We haven't done any work on that. We have been talking to the Friends of Oak Park Open Space to possibly take that project over once we design it in-house. They're fully capable of doing the project with volunteer labor up there. We have to buy the materials, of course, for them, and to figure out a way to water the trees for a couple of years. The last item there is the procurement of the skid steer, which you did purchase at the last board meeting. At this time, staff is requesting the board to authorize solicitation of bids for the Medea Creek Wildfire Resiliency Palm Tree Removal Project and Fire Damage Debris and Invasive Species Removal Project.
Chair, if I could, the board's aware of this, but the Oak Park Committee had been requesting work in Medea Creek, both invasive species and fire resiliency, and this grant came along about the same time we were getting those requests. So as far as I know, that piece of the project is very much supported by the committee in Oak Park.
The dangers of palm trees is fire danger primarily?
Yes, it's an invasive species also.
I know that palm trees are technically a type of supergrass, not a tree, and it makes it harder to dispose of sometimes. What do we do with the cut down trees? Do we just
we dispose of them? The contractor would be responsible not only to remove it, but clear it from the site, take it to the dump.
And then the fire break, you said that we would design that and supply the materials like trees and such?
That's correct.
I know a group of advocates for planting oak trees, that they're just looking for space to plant them.
Yeah, this is more of an inline fire break that we have planned or currently conceptually planned along a northerly trail that exists up there on the north side of Oak Park.
Well, I appreciate the partnership that we have with that open space group and the state, and the different groups have applied the grants for us to do this. So I'm in favor of it. Are there any other questions for staff?
Motion that we approve this?
I'll second that. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Abela?
Aye.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Gray?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Aye.
Chair Jenner?
Yes.
And the motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Wayne, there's also, I apologize, let's take care of it. That brings us to written communications of note.
Staff has no written communications of note to share.
That's going to bring us to reports by board members. We're going to start with Elaine.
We had the Oak Park Committee, and I thought it was extremely productive, and the quality of people that are now on the Oak Park Committee, they're thorough, educated about what they want, and more cohesive, and I thought it was a great meeting. I mean, it's good to see it, and I think staff, Wayne and his group, have done an incredible job accommodating them in Oak Park, and I just want to compliment him on that. These are two things that have nothing to do with the district. I had the pleasure of going to the Celebration of Life for Debbie Thomas, and it was quite an event in Malibu, and an amazing woman. And I just want to say I was grateful I could be there. And if you're not doing anything on the night of October 29th, Noontime Rotary is having a Halloween bash at the Arena nightclub. $10 ticket to get in. There'll be gift baskets and a 50-50 and music and costume contest. So if you're not doing anything, stop in on the night of the 29th. It starts at 7:30. That's it. Oh, excuse me, it isn't. I had a CARPD legislative meeting this morning, and we went over this last legislative session, and we're getting ready to start, the legislature is getting ready to start the second year of the 2 years session. And we'll be holding a meeting on December 9 to outline our priorities for next year for CARPD legislatively. So if anyone has any thoughts on something that needs to be taken care of legislatively, let me know. Thank you.
Ed, and then Josh. Ed, it's your turn.
Did you say my name, Ryan?
I did. Your board report,
Okay,
please.
sorry, I couldn't hear. All right. Attended the Soccer Foundation meeting, like I said earlier, which I heard about half of it on Zoom. Oak Park Committee meeting, and Jill and I also attended the memorial for Debbie Thomas, which was an emotional and really nice event, honoring a wonderful person. So and remembering a wonderful person. The next thing, I guess you can put under the category of one person's opinion or a rant or however you want to look at it. But I'm just going to say, call it a holiday wish. I do wish for fewer meetings, and this goes for whether it's the board, the staff, committee meetings, however you want to look at it. Fewer meetings, shorter meetings, and more productivity, more creativity, and more efficiency. And we certainly had some of that. It was more capable of it. I do think sometimes things bog down with the amount of meetings and the length of the meetings and presentations that take place. And then finally, I'm looking forward to Saturday, our 60th anniversary celebration. Hoping that'll be a great time. So that's what I have, Brian.
Thank you. Josh?
Yeah, I attended Rotary Morning, the Morning Club's Oktoberfest at Rancho Taco. That was a fantastic community event. The music was entertaining, lots of fun vendors. And then I also attended the Soccer Foundation meeting via Zoom. I do want to thank staff. I know the audio was tough this time, but it can only get better from here. And I want to thank staff for their work on making that happen, though. I know there's been plenty of Soccer Foundation meetings that weren't able to do via Zoom. So I do want to say thank you for that. I wish I could attend on Saturday, but won't be able to. I'm best man in a wedding, duties elsewhere. But I did get to talk up the Park District to the Acorn. They asked some questions about background and personal stories to do with the 60th anniversary and what it was like growing up in our community, and with the benefit of having RSRPD there. So try to talk it up, try to thank staff. I don't know if the Acorn will have passed along all of those words, but in case they didn't, I do want to thank staff and our leadership team and the board for all the work they've done over the years. And that concludes my report.
Kate?
Yes, here I am. I went on a tour of the Arroyo entryways with my Rotary Club, who is, we've taken a project on to assist in beautifying the gates, putting some landscaping up. That was fun. That was good. I hadn't seen all of them yet. I've walked along the Arroyo a couple of locations, but it was good to see all the entryways, and it is kind of a big job, ongoing job. And when we first started doing that project, it was exciting, and I remember thinking that I read somewhere you can judge a civilization by whether they plant trees under which they will never sit. And this is that kind of project, so I think it's especially good for us to do. So I liked it. I would love to have gone to Debbie Thomas's memorial, but I was out of town. But I hear it was awesome, and I'm sorry to have missed it. I was interviewed by the Acorn on being a long-term member. I was interviewed by the Acorn for the 60th anniversary, so I'm guessing it'll probably come out tomorrow. Maybe not. I guess that would be good timing tomorrow, because Saturday is our event, and which I'm looking forward to. So I guess we should watch the Acorn tomorrow. That's it.
Thank you. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. On our website, we have our land acknowledgement statement for those that would like to read it. The Royal High School Key Club approached me because they wanted to do a park cleanup and Wayne, I supplied them with the trash grabbers, and they had fun with them. So we're making it easy to volunteer here, and I appreciate that. The Education Foundation is one of our many partners, and they're doing an upcoming fundraiser where it's an online auction. I donated some items from Strathern Historical Park, including the new On the Tapo. I haven't read the whole thing, but I really like the first section on the Chumash people. There's some stuff in there I didn't know. Josh, you mentioned Oktoberfest. I believe you were actually working at it, weren't you?
It was an improvisational assistance. I wasn't supposed to be. They needed help.
I think you can add that to LinkedIn. I don't know how that works, but it might be able to fit on there. Well, that's a good group of community members that put together a fun event for people. I was a part of the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy meeting. I mostly focus on wildlife corridors, which is a part of open space, and any upcoming policies for fire prevention. So if anyone's curious about that, we can talk about that later. I'm looking forward to the Guns N' Roses cover band and our 60th anniversary. Although I put a bunch of ideas for puns for our press release, the Acorn, they released it, but they didn't go with my Guns N' Roses based puns. But I'm still excited for the concert and for the celebration on the 60th. I'm also excited this weekend is Dia de los Muertos. Is that this Sunday?
Yes.
This Sunday. It's one of my favorite events. It was it's always been fun, and it was really important to my mom. It was one of her favorite holidays, especially the last few years of her life. Sometimes she didn't really like to leave the house, but she loved that event. So I'll see many of you out there. And this Saturday, we're going to be back at Hummingbird Trail. This one's going to be the tough one because we have to hike to the top of the hill, but luckily the weather's going to be cool, so I'm looking forward to that. That's it for me. That brings us to reports by district manager.
Thank you, Chair. Things are good at the skate park. Nothing negative to report. The 60th celebration, Sandy sent out an email, but there's obviously a spot in the program at 3:30 for any of the board members to make comments. Mr. Dennert, as chair, is going to MC that event, and he will be asking any of you if you'd like to make comment at that event. Also, we've been invited by the city to receive an honorary resolution as a part of the city council meeting on Monday the 25th. And that is going to be virtual, so any of the board members that want to log in and attend the city council meeting on the 25th, certainly welcome. I've received a verbal request, and Wayne and I had a meeting with them. Waste Management is thinking about putting in some solar applications to support the landfill. They're asking us for an easement related to that in the Alamos Canyon area. We did ask them for a formal letter, and once I get that letter, I'll be bringing that to the board. The Oak Park Committee meeting went well. Just wanted to note that at your next meeting, we will be following up on a couple of items that need some policy direction from the board related to the Oak Park Committee meeting. I've also got a verbal request from the cemetery, the one next to Rancho Cini Park, and they're contemplating putting in some new signage, and they're exploring the idea of putting the signage in on our property and on the corner there as you enter the cemetery. So that's just a heads up. I just want to let you know that they're talking about doing a new sign out there, and they're interested in our help. Our September finances, we just closed that, went through those, and we're on track and fiscally sound. We have been talking to the city library, who's interested in potentially putting in some kind of library satellite in this building. Not much, it'll just be a place where you can get books and check out. So Mr. Miller's had a couple discussions with them, and we're going to explore that concept. The Oak Park supervisor recruitment, I believe we've done the first interviews, and the second interviews are scheduled, so that's nearing conclusion here in the next few weeks. So that's going on. And then lastly, relative to these items, I really wanted to thank Zach and the recreation team, but also the other departments that are supporting him. We've got a lot going on. We've got the 60th anniversary on Saturday. We've got the Dia de los Muertos. We've got the street fair. We've got 2 Halloween carnivals. We've got the Veterans Day ceremony, and we've got the Snow Fest all in the next 3 weeks. So his staff, it's all hands on deck, led by staff, Zach and his team with support from Wayne and admin. But it's a really busy month, and I just want to show my appreciation to the staff for all those events and hard work they're putting in. Next board meeting on November 4th, there are a lot of items here. Some of them will be on consent and they're short items, and I might move some of them back to the 18th. Earth Day award criteria, we're going to bring back Birdie Bar lease renewal on the 4th. We got to renew the resolution for having our meetings hybrid. There's a standard item we got to do for plan development fees. That'll be on consent. There's a resolution we need to do to apply for our per capita grant funding under Proposition 68. We're going to try to bring the drone item back on the 4th. We've got CSDA bylaws to look at. Again, these are quick. The Oak Park follow-up items, which is a tree removal and fumitoxin potentially, and then potentially a closed session. So there's a lot of items there, but they're short items, and 3 or 4 of those will be on the consent calendar. For November 18th, just giving you guys a heads up, we're looking at potentially bringing back the Activity Center Phase 3 plans. The board had asked for a cost estimate and some other things, the gym. So we're targeting the 18th for that meeting. And then looking into December, we're looking at bringing pickleball back the first meeting in December. These are tentative dates here. So committee meetings, we've got one scheduled, I believe, for November 16th, the Youth Services Committee meeting at 6:30. That involves Josh and Ed. Those are the only committee meetings that I'm aware that we have scheduled. That concludes my report.
Any questions for the district manager? Dan, when I talk to you next time, I want to talk about the easement at Alamos Canyon.
Okay.
And then the library was, that branch library, or whatever we're going to call it, that's a really exciting idea. And then is there any update on pickleball hours at Sinaloa, lighting or?
We have a draft agreement that the school district sent over based on a meeting we have, and Zach and I believe we have a meeting tomorrow to go through that draft agreement to expand the hours. So we're working on it. We haven't completed it yet.
Seeing no other questions, that's going to bring us to closed session, and there is none. That's going to bring us to adjournment. I'm going to adjourn this meeting in memory of Debbie Thomas.
Anybody want an update of the score?
Yes. The meeting is adjourned. People are now going to be talking baseball, I think.
11